And we begin in Marrakesh, where high-level talks to combat climate change are wrapping up in Morocco. Dozens of world leaders have been meeting at the COP22 summit. They're trying to agree on how to implement a plan to curb global warming. We start our coverage tonight with this report from CCTV's Peninah Karibe.
Hours to go now till the final statements here in Marrakesh. But just how close are we to a plan that will make an impact after these delegates fly home? On Thursday, China gave its assessment. Its delegation says there's agreement on the problems facing the Paris Agreement on global warming, and there is agreement on the guidelines for putting the deal into force.
The hosting country wishes to pass a declaration which is still under discussion. We think that the declaration should showcase its comprehensiveness. China is here to do something, not to show something.
Donald Trump's victory in the US elections has clouded these talks. Trump is a climate change skeptic who has claimed he will withdraw from the Paris Agreement. But China says it will seek his cooperation.
Though it's not very clear about the new government's policy on climate change, China would like to continue cooperating with the new US government.
China also reiterated its plans to help Africa meet the challenge of climate change. Africa is suffering the most from climate change, yet is the least equipped to deal with it.
China will help African countries improve their capability in financing and investment. Developing countries have money, though some African countries claim that they don't know how to get and use the money.
So come Friday, after almost 2 weeks of speeches, workshops and meetings, it'll come down to the final statements. Delegates came in here upbeat and promising action. They need to leave with a practical plan to move forward and curb global warming. Peninah Karibe, CCTV in Marrakesh, Morocco.
Right, let's hear more now from Peninah. She's still there in Marrakesh. Peninah, the summit there in Marrakesh is almost done now. What are the key outcomes so far?
Well, Beatrice, we definitely seem to have some tangibles from this COP22, and the first indication of that was given away by the Chinese delegation when earlier in a press briefing they said that all the stakeholders here have come to a unanimous agreement. Now, we didn't get much details from them, but we did definitely get a little bit more from the US Special Envoy for Climate Change. Let's take a listen.
At this point in the formal meetings, parties have completed nearly all the technical work planned for Marrakesh. We're quite pleased with the progress we've made so far. Among other things, we were able to adopt a robust work plan that will enable us to flesh out the transparency framework that forms the bedrock of the Paris Agreement. Countries announced more than $60 million for an initiative on capacity building for transparency, so-called CBIT or CBIT, assuring that all countries can implement their obligations to report.
Well, Peninah, it's all winding down now there in Morocco with the COP22. What can we expect, even though we haven't heard exactly what the outcomes will be? What can we expect as COP22 comes to a close tomorrow?
Well, Beatrice, that's the big question that everybody here is asking. It's been 2 weeks of negotiations, intense discussions between governments and private players as well. And now, like you said, it's come down to that final day, which is Friday. And people here were and of course the rest of the world, very eager to know what we shall get. Now, of course, we expect what is now being famously referred to as the Marrakesh Declaration, basically a ministerial statement outlining every individual's commitment to move to implement these goals spelled out in the Paris deal and do that with urgency. So under that, of course, we're expecting to hear several things. Number one, touching about the guidelines that now we understand have been established again unanimously by all the stakeholders here on how to implement these Paris goals. Now, we do know, of course, that people here are very keen to know what are the areas or the key issues that have been prioritized when we talk about implementing that crucial Paris deal. We also expect to hear about financing, because that's been one of of the key focus points in these discussions here in Marrakesh. We've been talking about mitigation and adaptation, and of course, the least developed countries have been raising concerns about that, saying the developed country parties have not really been putting into action their words. So now we want to know how they in fact plan to leverage private investment. Now that's of course one of the key issues that will be spelled out tomorrow. Also, people here are very keen to know how we transition from fossil fuels to clean energy. Now we understand from those we've engaged here that this will include commitments from both governments and big manufacturers especially. People of course very keen to hear what strategies will be employed as now the world gears up towards building that low carbon, climate resilient economy. So of course very crucial issues, and the D-Day finally is Friday tomorrow, and everybody here of course very keen to hear what exactly these delegates have been discussing for those 2 weeks and the outcomes from these COP22 victories.
Right, Peninah Karibe following all the developments for us there in Marrakesh, Morocco at the COP22 summit.